Irish guy, and for some players, this season has been about as much fun as eating mud out of a shoe. Yes, it's been a great whirlwind season for some, but I just want to talk about the ones who probably feel like they've been chained to a bath in Jeffrey Dahmer's house. I feel for these players. I'm gonna make one player for every Premier League club who, yeah, last summer would have been so excited to begin this season. Their stock was sky high. The hype was huge. But what has happened since to them, to their reputation, it's fallen off a cliff. Right, let's go. Arsenal Kieran Tierney. If you go into the Arsenal training grounds, oh, you're probably gonna find a bunch of enthusiastic men looking like they've all been given tickets to watch Adele at Disneyland. But there will be a puddle of Scottish tears in the corner of the canteen. Poor old Kieran Tierney. Surely, he must be so furious inside, he probably can't get through a meal without choosing to punch his sandwich to death. Last year, people were tipping this 25-year-old left back to captain Arsenal. I mean, back in March, he was linked with a £50 million transfer to Real Madrid. Honestly, it looked like Carlo Ancelotti was salivating over this fella as if his nose was made of chocolate cake. I mean, we began this season with Pep Guardiola and Manchester City wanting to buy this guy. But now, I mean, 5 minutes ago, Tierney was arguably Arsenal's best player during the dark Mikel Arteta years, but now, he's mostly a bench-warming cheerleader who gets 15-minute cameos every week. Alexander Zinchenko has blatantly stolen his place, relegating Tierney to just playing against FC Zurich and Bodo Glimt. Tierney probably has to stop himself from taking his anger out by weeing into Zinchenko's food. Aston Villa Philippe Coutinho. To be fair, Philippe Coutinho's hype as an elite player pretty much died around the same time as the first Venom film. Yeah, it's been a while ago, but don't forget how he ended last season, putting Aston Villa 2-0 up at the Etihad. Surely, the Brazilian was going to kick on under Steven Gerrard and light up the Premier League this season, right? Nah, he's had all the impact of a drunk Mickey Mouse, and now just spends his life rotting on Unai Emery's bench. This guy is surely too embarrassed to show his face in Birmingham. Imagine him bumping into Liverpool fans in the street. I mean, it must be like bumping into your ex-wife when you're now living in a dustbin and offering hugs for money on the street. Oh, well, lads, pretty simple. Subscribe! Hit that red button! You absolute legends! Anyway, back into the video. Bournemouth Mark Travers. Because Ireland are utterly blessed with budding top-class goalkeepers right now, I'm not actually as upset about the fall of Mark Travers as I would usually be. But lad, there was hype around this guy at Bournemouth last season. He was keeping an England underage world champion out of the team. Honestly, the spoiled little Freddie Woodman arriving from his pampered Premier League lifestyle at Newcastle United, they just spent the entire season being unable to move Travers, a former Swindon Town goalie, from the team. Yeah, he must have felt like ripping his arm off with a saw. But this season, Travers is all the hype of Indiana Jones 6. I mean, does anyone want to see a fat Harrison Ford dribble milk down his front on screen for an hour and a half? Nobody cares about Travers anymore. The guy lost his place after conceding 16 goals in 3 Premier League games. Then he regains his spot 2 months later after Neto pulled his hamstring. And I mean, what's he done? Been on the losing side in 7 out of those 8 games. Just conceded 4 at home to Burnley in the FA Cup. The man has picked the ball out of his own net 37 times this season. He's conceded nearly 40 goals in 14 matches for Bournemouth this season. Oh, Mark, he must feel like banging his face off a toilet wall. After that wretched run of form, even his own mum probably lasted him down the phone. Brentford Sergi Canos. Does somebody want to explain to me what has happened to Sergi Canos? This is a Spanish winger who, through all of last season, was linked with a return to Barcelona after spending 3 years in the academy. I mean, after his early season form last campaign, some Liverpool fans were wondering whether they were wrong to throw this guy in a bin 7 years ago. Now, he can't get in the Brentford team. I know he began the season with a hamstring injury, but I'm sorry. He's failed to get off the bench 6 times. He's played 72 minutes in the Premier League this season. 72 minutes! The length of 3.5 Simpsons episodes. The guy's barely needed a shower all year. He must be wondering just how is his reputation and hype now stuffed down a sewer drain? Brighton Tariq Lamptey. I stand by this one. There are very few players in world sport who were overrated quite like Tariq Lamptey at Brighton. For some reason, after realizing that this boy can run fast, Arsenal fans were ready to rip out their teeth if it guaranteed them buying this man. Lads, in the back end of 2020, the media were singing to the world that Frank Lampard choosing to sell Lamptey was a Chelsea blunder. I'm sorry, the legitimately world-class Reece James makes Lamptey by comparison just look like a cartoon rat. The guy is not that good. He barely played for Ghana at the World Cup, and yes, he does play for Brighton every week, but I mean, he started 16 games on the bench this season. Anyone who ever tried to pretend that this man was Chelsea quality, do you accept that you now sound like the stupid one of Pinky and the Brain? Chelsea Edward Mendy. Edward Mendy has had a nightmare year. You know that horrible mistake he made at Ellen Road in August? That was the moment you could pinpoint as the one where Mendy's hype crumpled around his feet. That was the moment he was exposed. Always beware the quick glow up in this sport. Did anyone really think that a man in his late 20s, keeping goal for Rennes in mid-table French football, was world class? People talked about him being one of the best goalies in the world. Yeah, nobody had heard of him until he was 28. Anyway, he's since had a horrible World Cup, has only played one Champions League game this season, has spent 9 Chelsea games warming the bench, and hasn't won a single game in a Chelsea shirt since September the 3rd, when Thomas Tuchel was still in a job. Yeah, we're in mid-January now. Anyway, apparently he's since snubbed a 6-year contract offer because Chelsea aren't showing him enough respect over wages. I mean, sure, he's probably embarrassed by the fact that Kepa earns twice as much as him, but Eddie, it's still £100,000 a week. And for the last year, you mostly look like a B-Tech Rob Green. Just pick up the pen and sign. Here's the Palace Will Hughes. Pretty simple, this one. Will Hughes might look like one of those weird, creepy albino men who usually lurk in the bushes outside Cheryl Cole's house. But while in Derby County as a teenager, don't forget, he was tipped to be one of the best midfielders in Europe. Yeah, he's still 27 and yet to win a single England cap. Listen, I know that all that hype went out the window around the same time as Joe McKelder-Rees, but still, Crystal Palace were desperate to sign this guy from Watford. They pursued him with desperation in their eyes. But now, he barely plays, just gets chucked out of the pitch by Patrick Vieira for the last 5 minutes in every match. Honestly, this man's season hasn't been great. Everton, Abdoulaye Doucouré. Remember while at Watford, Abdoulaye Doucouré was held up as one of the best midfielders in the Premier League? Lads, Arsenal and Mikel Arteta wanted to sign this man 2 years ago. 4 years ago, he was on the shopping list at PSG. Frank Lampard clearly hates the man because he hasn't given him a Premier League start since August. Yeah, it's just 10-minute substitute appearances here and there. I'm sorry, but if you can't even get the spineless Everton team, I mean, it's not like he's even old. He's only just turned 30. Oh, what happened to Abdoulaye? His career has taken such a knock that even Scouse children in the street probably don't even want a selfie with this guy. Fulham Harry Wilson. Harry Wilson was supposed to be the guy. And 2 years ago, after a Premier League season where he kept banging in free kicks for Bournemouth, I vividly remember Liverpool fans wanting Jurgen Klopp to fit this Welsh wonderkid into their team.
Oh, just imagine his set pieces. He's our Welsh David Beckham.
Yeah, I know he's 25 and has already played for 7 different clubs. But last summer was the first permanent transfer of his life. That was the first team who ever paid actual money for the man. He was given a 4-year deal at Fulham, and considering this guy was playing for Wales 10 years ago when he was 16, you would think that a guy who was once named Liverpool Academy Player of the Year would rip this division apart. Nah. He's an impact player off the bench, essentially having lost his place to Willian, a nearly 40-year-old man. I mean, a clue to see just how much his hype has died. Just do a poll outside Anfield. Ask them if they'd like Klopp to buy this guy this month. They would probably sooner than a homeless man throw up on their shoes. Leave Joe Gelhardt. Joe Gelhardt must be furious. All I heard last season was how this guy was the future of Leeds. An absolute wonder kid. Oh yeah, coughed up a chunk of last minute skill to help keep them up. But not only is he not kicked on, but the 20-year-old has watched other wonder kids steal his thunder, like Serencio Somerville and Wilfred Notto. They've looked electric and actually weighed in with some goals. Lads, Notto is younger than him. Lads, Cristiano Ronaldo hated being asked to come onto the pitch with only 2 minutes left against Spurs, right? Yeah, Gelhardt has literally been brought on after 80 minutes in 9 games this season. 3 of them, he's only asked to play 1 minute of the match. Last year, he was this absolute budding young Leeds superstar. Now, he's been linked with a loan to Swansea and Sunderland. Yikes. Leicester Luke Thomas. I feel tricked. I watched Luke Thomas banging a goal on his Leicester debut at Old Trafford in May 2021. I mean, it was the end of the campaign, so it was like a cliffhanger on the season finale of Lost.
Oh, how will John Locke battle it out against the smoke monster this time?
Yeah, and then they just don't mention it again for 4 years. Luke Thomas was a teenage superstar apparently. The next big money English left back star. Yeah. He's only 22 now, and I know he's forced his way back into the team after the World Cup restart, but before that, he used to have to run on the bench 11 times for a poor Leicester team. They conceded 6 at Spurs in September, and he still couldn't get in the side. Has now just started in 4 straight league defeats. Not good. Liverpool Fabio Carvalho. How quickly a man's hype falls off a cliff. Lads, go back to the beginning of October and Fabio Carvalho was in heaven. He just played the full 90 minutes for Liverpool in a 7-1 Champions League win, and he chipped in with Premier League goals against Bournemouth and Newcastle. Things were going great, but since then, what has he done? Has he driven over Jurgen Klopp's cat? Has he accidentally puked on his lawn? Because since the World Cup, he's played 3 minutes in the league. Liverpool are having a midfield crisis, and yet he's just been left to grow stale on the bench every match. Ever since he played an hour in the defeat at Nottingham Forest, he's barely been seen. I'm guessing that Jurgen Klopp must have been angered by that display, to the point where he probably wanted to drown this kid in a goldfish bowl. But honestly, he turns 21 this year. He's not a child. So if he carries on like this until the end of the season, then suddenly, we've gone from a Liverpool cult hero scoring a 98th minute winner against Newcastle to, let's be honest, Premier League flop? Man City Calvin Phillips. To be fair, there aren't many Man City players who've had an awful season so far, but I guess maybe Calvin Phillips. Last summer, sure, he was coming off the back of an injury year for Leeds, but he was still seen as a midfield destroyer in everyone's eyes, still coasting on that Euro 2020 hype. By now, especially after watching him in the League Cup quarter-final, chuck in one of the worst midfield performances ever seen in a Man City shirt, I think now everyone is starting to realise that this guy is just a second coming of Jack Rodwell. Man United Jadon Sancho. What is going on with Jadon Sancho? What was Ben White randomly quitting the World Cup with no explanation? And now Jadon Sancho just taking time off football? I'm sorry, this isn't like Macclesfield allowing their striker to go in the Love Island jungle, is it? I'm not sitting here like a strict teacher who demands a doctor's note, especially not from two multi-millionaires who don't know who I am. Oh, come on, Jadon. Where are you? Has he just decided to take a month off to just go eat pizza down the pub? We haven't actually seen Sancho since he was left out of England's World Cup squad and was instantly mocked by Ryanair. I mean, they even tagged him in the tweets. Why is Sancho being bullied by a bunch of aeroplanes? His hype is done. He began the season looking decent with nifty goals against Liverpool and Leicester, but since then, the man's been overshadowed by Anthony, and I think his performance in that 6-3 battering at the Etihad has lost any trust Erik ten Hag might have had in him. And now this guy, I tipped him to be a brilliant Man United signing. I mean, he was once part of a double act with Erling Haaland and coveted by every elite club in the world. But now, in the summer, would anyone really be surprised to see this guy loaned to West Ham? I mean, he's also shut down his social media accounts. Bear in mind, this guy has been on Twitter for years, openly celebrating Chelsea's Champions League win in 2012. Honestly, Jadon, are you okay? Newcastle Matt Target. Matt Target must be livid. This guy probably couldn't believe his luck. He was on Aston Villa's bench every week and then joins Newcastle on loan after they missed out on Luca Digne. Then he played every week, signed on a £15 million permanent deal, but now he's back on the bench. How costly a dead leg can be? Because he started the opening day win over Nottingham Forest in August at left back, but then set out 2 games with a dead leg that I believe has ruined his life because of Dan Burn, deputy in that position in the brilliant 3-3 draw with Man City. And yeah, I mean, Target did crawl his way back into the team after that, but Burn soon took his spot back. And since then, Newcastle have been excellent. By now, Dan Burn is the club's Geordie club legend. He was released by Newcastle as a child in 2004. He then went to work in Asda and played for Darlington. And here he is scoring in the League Cup quarter-final before dancing like Borat on Sky. Honestly, Target, he's now in the same situation he was at Villa, except at least then he can make his peace with being kept out of the team by a former Barcelona defender with nearly 50 French caps. But Burn, a former Yeovil Town and Wigan centre half who looks like the butler of the Addams family. Oh, poor Matty Target. Nottingham Forest Lewis O'Brien. Lewis O'Brien was a midfield colossus for Huddersfield Town last season and actually looked to be a brilliant 10 million buy for Nottingham Forest. He was man of the match on his home debut in a 1-0 win over West Ham. This guy was going to be the heart and soul of Forest this year, right? He looked the best of their signings. Nah, he didn't survive that playing 90 minutes in a 6-0 loss at the Etihad and hasn't started since. Now he's just a bench warmer who looks a little bit like a teapot and he only gets 20-minute cameos off the bench, and that's if he's lucky. Southampton's Sekou Mara. I know he just scored against Man City in the League Cup and that's a good start, but up until then, this was a horrible season for 20-year-old promising French striker Sekou Mara after signing from Bordeaux. Southampton in the Premier League are a losing team who cannot score, and yet this former Ligue 1 talent was barely being given a chance. Tottenham Jed Spence. I feel sorry for Jed Spence. It's almost like this man has just been kept in prison. Last season, he was a high-flying superstar, playing right wing back for Nottingham Forest and scoring past Premier League teams in the FA Cup. I mean, this guy celebrated promotion by laughing at Neil Warnock on Twitter, and then he chooses Tottenham. He's played 3 minutes in the league and wasn't even given 10 seconds in the Champions League. He has failed to make it off the bench 14 times and is yet to start a single match. He wasn't even allowed to play either of the cup matches against old team Nottingham Forest or even Portsmouth. Does Antonio Conte think this guy is about as exciting as lettuce soup? Tottenham are treating this guy like a 16-year-old intern. No, he turns 23 this year. This isn't like when they bought Ryan Sessegnon. Give him a chance. Because right now, I'm sure Neil Warnock is probably smoking a pipe on the couch and laughing until he's pink in the face. West Ham Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson is 22, and yet this season, nobody on Twitter really mentioned him until he talked to Jackmate for an hour. This was the season to kick on and cement yourself in the West Ham first team. Well, I mean, whenever he's been given a start by David Moyes this year, he's mostly lost the match and also his starting spot. This guy is now just a permanent fixture on the bench for a supposed Hammers wonderkid who made his debut 3 years ago for a guy who was named Young Player of the Season in May. this is not kicking on. Wolves, Hee-chan Hwang. Hee-chan Hwang played pretty much every week in his debut year at Wolves. One of the first names on Bruno Lage's team sheet. A devastating South Korean forward on his day. Yeah, this has been a disappointing season. I know he started the last 3 games under Julian Lopetegui. The new coach seems to like him, but really, during the autumn and the beginning of winter, it really was just 10-minute cameos off the bench for a team who cannot score. I mean, Hee-chan what? Anyway, that's one thing. Let me know in the comments below. What do you think? What players had the most disappointing season? Let me know. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe. As always, I'll talk to you in a while.